Hey everyone, I want to give us a quick recap of what we went over in our previous teacher council, as well as, for those who weren't able to attend, enough information to get the gist of what we talked about so we can all incorporate the things that we discussed and went over in the future lessons that we have coming up. The main point that we talked about was how we can more effectively use stories, understand the different types of stories, diversify the stories that we use, and use them intentionally to overcome a number of challenges that some themes of challenges that came up as I spoke with nearly everybody on the phone before the teacher council meeting. As we talk about storytelling, one of the main points I want to remind us is our purpose of gospel teaching versus the regular teaching that many of us do in our careers. The objective of what I'm just going to call regular teaching, the main objective is to learn how to do a job or to teach facts so the learner can learn certain facts. Us as teachers of the gospel, our objective is to help the participants increase their conversion. And that's not a shared objective of just regular teaching. Our objective is different, therefore some ways that we teach are different. I hope we don't only focus on the techniques that we've learned in our teaching careers, but we also remember some things that Christ taught when it comes to ways to teach the gospel for conversion. In addition, as we talk about stories, we went through an example of a talk by Elder Redland called The Powerful Virtuous Cycle of the Doctrine of Christ. And in his talk, about 25% of it, a quarter of it, is him telling a story. And then after the story, he gives the main point of that story. Then he goes into the things he wants to teach, and during that, he refers back to the story multiple times. So a big story, a big kind of takeaway at the end of the story, and he tells the class what they should be taking away from it about momentum. Also, he tells a different kind of story, not just a first-person story, but at the end he also gives an additional metaphor, a way to teach about just not judging and minding our own business, basically, through another story at the end. So he uses multiple stories, and that's the point he refers back to throughout his talk. There's different types of stories, and if you find yourself running out of stories, you may be stuck telling the same type. There's stories to teach, stories to testify, and stories to build trust or empathy, connection, relatability. Stories that teach can use different types of methods too. Within stories that teach, there's metaphors, such as faith is like a seed, or a certain man had 2 sons, those types of famous stories that are really metaphors. The other is a third-person example, something that you've read about, something that didn't happen to you, but you tell that story to teach something, how something works. The last is a first-person example, something that you experience, something that's real and relevant to the class that happened to you. Stories that testify are stories that go over how you arrived at learning something, believing in something, or having a testimony of something. Stories that build trust or empathy, connection, they may not necessarily be really deep teaching moments, but they show how you are someone who has experienced the same type of human emotions that your class has, that you can connect over so many common feelings that people have had. A relatable win or a loss or a challenge or something like that. Abel Rodriguez gave a great talk in Sacrament meeting not that long ago, where I still remember one of his stories he shared about when he was trying to get a certain shift at work, and he prayed and he did his part. He prayed, fasted, or other things to show the Lord his righteous desire. And then as the handout got passed around, all the availability that didn't include Sunday was all filled up. And when it got to him, a more junior employee, the only option was on Sunday, and just that loss, that crushing feeling. And I really connected to that. The story ended up working out where he ended up being able to get his desired shift because someone who got the good shift decided they didn't like it. They didn't like being around management during the day. But I remembered that feeling. Some examples of how to structure your lesson with stories are in the bottom of this handout. If you use one story or if you're using a variety of stories during the lesson, just make sure when you share your story, you quickly share the main point. We talked about managing the energy of the class, and the class has a lot of energy near the beginning, but as you go into more of the discussion, maybe not everyone will be totally engaged, or there's other things that go on during the middle of the lesson where there's kind of a lull. and especially near the end of the lesson, unless you're bringing people back to attention. A story is a very good way to get everyone kind of back to attention. But near the end of the lesson, if you haven't pulled everyone back, and that's when you're saving your main point, you may have missed the part where you may have missed the energy of the class for them to really pay attention. So manage the energy of the class and the attention of the class. Use stories effectively to get people interested in the beginning, to bring them back at the end, and to make sure you're not saving your main point for much later. One of the challenges that some classrooms face is engagement, getting a diverse set of engagement from different people rather than the same group of people sharing the same types of comments. I invite you to reach out to people before a lesson, and don't necessarily just ask them to share a comment, but ask them for their stories. When you've decided what main points you want to talk about in your lesson, think about who could share a story about that main point that would be good to hear from. Stories can help build connection between you and the classroom, you and the participants, but letting participants share their own story builds connection between participants and other participants. Christ was an expert teacher. He taught with stories. He also listened to the stories and life and situations of the people that he was ministering to. Hearing the stories from your class is an excellent source of testimony, teaching, and connection. So don't limit stories just as something that you're giving, but draw those stories out from your class, and you'll find, again, teaching, testimony, and connection will grow as well.